Welcome to Selling in the Motor Trade, in association with Automotive Management and symcotraining. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips, and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. And firstly, I want to say thank you for taking the time to tune in. Hey, listen, I also want to get your views on the team environment. Okay. Sometimes you have winning environments. Sometimes you have environments that aren't winning environments. What I mean by that is I often see a salesperson might be struggling in one particular team. We take him out. I know there's a good friend of ours, Colin McAllister, of both of ours. He told me a story, and I don't want to embarrass Colin now, but he talked about one particular person went from one team to another team, and they flourished. So it wasn't the person was good or bad. It was actually the team. Okay. So can I ask you a question? What about the environment? How important is the whole environment on that winning team? And again, what can the owner, the manager, the senior manager do to make sure that team is right?
So emotions are contagious. We know that to be true. If you put person A in a head scanner and person B in a head scanner, look at their brain activity patterns, get person A to tell a compelling story that has emotion and feeling and twists and turns in it. Watch their brain activity pattern. Listen, watch the brain activity pattern of the listener of the story. What's interesting is there's a transferring of brain activity pattern. What does this mean? It means that emotions are contagious. It means that emotional states can pass from one person to another. Not in the sense that they kind of jump out of one person's head into another. I don't mean that. I just mean that in the way that we interact, there is a kind of like imprinting or induction effect. So the reason I say that is that the mind, we now know, is not confined to the extent of your skull, but there's an overlapping effect. And to put this in layman's terms, when you hang out with someone who's fun and excited, you get more excited and feel more fun. If you hang out with someone who's optimistic, you feel more optimistic. If you hang out with someone who's joyful, you feel a bit more joyful. But if you hang out with an energy vampire, you feel really bad.
I know. Energy vampire. Oh, we all know some of them.
Or you hang out with someone who's very, very critical or habitually critical, then you already, as soon as they look at you, believe that they think something bad of you, and you know that you have to now battle that in your brain. And so emotions are contagious, which means that the emotional collective environment of a team is worth tending to, because there's an ROI associated to emotional cultural climate in a team and their performance. And yes, that translates into sales, or it translates into any kind of service, because it's basically who you spend your time with affects.
It really does rub off onto everyone else, doesn't it? That's where you get that whole winning team there. Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay. Hey, listen, I've got to ask you a question then. Why do we as humans, we tend to copy other people, okay? We tend to actually have a look at what other people are doing, and we want to do it. In fact, there's 5 phrases that I learned very early on in selling. Most people, everyone knows, everyone tells me, there's an old saying. And people seem to think, well, hold on, if everyone else is doing it, maybe I should do. Yeah. There's lots of videos on YouTube about a lady in I think it's a dentist surgery, where a bell goes off, and every time the bell goes off, everyone stands up and sits down.
Yeah.
They're all actors. And this poor lady looks around and thinks, what's happening?
Yes.
And of course, very quickly, she starts copying. I mean, there's a lift experiment, I think it's in Perth, Australia, where they all turn around the wrong way in the lift. Yeah. You've seen the one, this poor lady gets in and she goes, what's happening here? She quickly turns around. Why do we as humans copy and follow other people?
Yeah, it's called the bandwagon bias. The bandwagon bias. It's the mind's unconscious tendency to assume that if everyone's doing it, it must be good. And then there's also a FOMO counter bias related to that as well. And that is that if I'm not doing what everyone else is doing, I must be missing out. So these are unconscious drivers that shape our behavior. A really great example would be if you saw 2 videos on YouTube, one with 30,000 views and one with 3 views, which are you more likely to click on, right?
Yeah.
the one with 30,000 views, because your mind fills in the blanks and creates meaning out of just the data in front of you. All you know is that this video has 30,000 views, and your brain starts to create meaning from that. Oh, this must be a valuable video. This must be useful. This must be better. This must be funnier, whatever. But then we skip over the fact that, you know, actually this one could have been out for 10 years and this one's out for 3 minutes. Or it could be that this is just viral because someone tripped over a step and hit their head. Funny. But the other video that's got 3 views is, here are 3 keys to maximizing your team's performance. Massively more valuable to me.
Yeah.
So the bandwagon bias is part of human nature, and with all cognitive biases, there's over 180 documented biases. The more we understand about these biases and know that they're at work, the better we can catch them and not fall victim to them.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay. Listen, first, people have seen you on the Channel 4. Can I improve my memory? Or maybe listen to some of your TED Talks. Please go and have a look at some of the TED Talks. But I need to ask you the question. Dr. Tharaka, why can I remember my phone number as a kid when I was 12 years old?
Yes.
Well, sometimes I can't remember where I put my car keys in the morning. What is that? Why is that there? How do I improve that memory there in a short, because I don't want to go into the whole lot that you covered on Channel 4, but why do I do that? My memory is so short-term, sometimes not the best.
Your memory for putting your car keys down and your memory for learning a number are 2 different memory skills. So it's like comparing how good you are at lifting dumbbells with your arms to doing squats. They're 2 different disciplines, okay? So we have to bear that in mind. But the other thing you mentioned about learning when you were younger, there's something called a critical age, in that the brain takes information and language in differently and can embed it as habit more easily before the age of 12 or 13 compared to the adult brain. So learning a language as a kid, or a number or a rhythm or something like that, is easier and different to how the brain functions in adult life. It's not impossible to do as an adult, but it's just different, and it's harder. The car keys thing is a really, really great example, because you've heard of short-term memory and long-term memory phrases. You've heard that phrase before. So, you know, your brain houses memory all over it. Memory doesn't live in just one place. It's everywhere. You know, there's bits in your cerebellum for movement. There's bits in your top of mind neocortex for, well, top of mind memories, and the list goes on. But your short-term memory is designed to hold information for just a few seconds. It's designed, it's like an inbox tray, right? The moment that I'm living in sits on the inbox tray and is allowed to evaporate in a few seconds for the next moment to be placed on the inbox tray. So it's so I can process moment by moment by moment, stay present. Your long-term memory can house things forever. So, well, technically, indefinitely. And so when you need to, when you're working in short-term memory, you're present, but then the memory's gone. So when I come back from work and put my car keys down and move on into the kitchen, in the moment I knew where I put my car keys down, but 1 minute later, I don't know, because it just was a working memory issue. The sneaky technique to knowing where you put your car keys down is, as you put your car keys down, know that this is something you're likely to forget, and become very attentive to where you've put your car keys down. You put your car keys down on the coffee table. Well, you could maybe, in the moment, and this is a cognitive practice, picture your car keys dancing on the coffee table, or something silly like that will stick in your mind. Or you scratch the table with the car keys and your wife goes mad, or something like that.
Don't actually do that. Just imagine it. I'm hoping. Yes.
But now, because I've created some kind of attentive visual or funny, bizarre story, it's my long-term memory's got a chance.
Okay. Now listen, with memory then, a practical skill, remembering people's names.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. As a salesperson, we need to remember people's names, not just the customer, but I'd like to remember the customer's name, their buying partner's name, their husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, their children's names, even their dog. Any tips you have for remembering people's names?
Yeah. So again, pay attention to the name that you hear, because names are notorious for evaporating from the short-term memory inbox tray. When someone introduces themselves to you, the next thing you're thinking about as soon as you hear their name is what you say back to them. And before you know it, the name's evaporated. So again, let's just say you meet someone, they're called David. They meet you in a networking meeting. Hi, my name's David. So as soon as I hear them say, my name is David, and as I'm saying, hi, my name is Tharaka, I'm picturing the first thing I think about when I hear the name David, which is in this case right now, David and Goliath. and I somehow try and mesh this picture with the person in front of me to create a memorable story, because my hippocampus in my brain will respond to that and it becomes more memorable.
Sorry, your
hippocampus.
Okay, hippocampus.
Yeah, that's right. The hippocampus is part of your brain and your customers' brains that consolidate memory. And in order for me to remember that this chap is called David, what I might be doing is, as he's talking to me, let's say he's an IT consultant, I might be picturing David swinging a laptop around his head, like David did with a sling and a stone before he hit Goliath. So maybe I'm picturing this guy just swinging a computer around his head, and I'm attaching that to the visual cues I have in front of me. And so now when I see him again, I'm more likely to be able to fish that data out of my head. Hang on, you were the guy swinging something over what were you? Oh, you were swinging a laptop. You're the IT consultant. You're David, the IT consultant. So,
Love it.
yeah, that helps. And then other techniques, creating stories around the people and the dog and things like that. You create stories, you create memorable images that help stick in your mind.
Because we remember images right then, not just the word. I suppose that's what you're driving at there.
Yeah, because when you use your imagination, when you use visual, you're giving your brain more to work with, more currency to actually attach to that long-term memory function. Yeah. Do you not remember a film better than a book, or are you differently wired? What will you remember?
Film all day long. Okay,
yeah, me too.
Film all day long. Now, having said that, a book, I suppose I have to picture the story in my head and so forth. And I think it's film because we see it more visually. Would that be right?
Yeah. Your brain processes images 60,000 times faster than it does text. So we're very wired for the visual, which again is a great top tip for our sales guys listening in. And that is that, how you present yourself visually has a big impact on the cognitive biases and the assumptions that your future client makes about you. You want to make them feel relaxed. You want to make them feel like they can trust you. You want to make them feel that you're not here to sell something, but you're here to help them buy something. And so there are so many different bits to being visual and memorable that are important.
Well, I suppose we got to remember not just our client, we got to make sure they remember us.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to be memorable. You want to be memorable in the minds of those that you serve. And I've said this before, people don't make decisions based on who they forget, it's on who they remember. So how do you make yourself more memorable than the competition down the road, And it's those nice things, those touching things, those meaningful things for a client or a customer that really go a long way.
Listen, people listening to this or watching this, you got to go and have a look at Dr. Tharaka on the TEDx speak. I mean, pi, how many digits do you remember on pi? How many was it? That was
100 decimal places.
100 decimal places there. And halfway through you stopped. I thought, oh no, he's got it wrong there. I don't know if you did that. I don't know if you did that for effect or not. Okay. No, it wasn't.
It was just a natural pause. I was like, what is the next number?
What is but pi to 100 places, sensational, absolutely sensational. Go and have a look at that. So listen, last things are this. Do you have any tips for the senior manager listening to this? Anything you'd like to leave them with? They say, listen, you can go back and put this in place now, today, and actually get an impact in their business.
Yeah, so many things to choose from. I'm trying to pick one. I mean, the what went well is simple, it's for free, right. It's easy and effective. So I think, definitely put a pin in that. Think about the what went well huddle. I think this is a cliffhanger we're leaving people on. Maybe we need to do an episode 2, but I think that it's really important to realize that with the team that you're leading or managing, things are different now post lockdown, post-lockdown. Lockdown's aged our brain. It's also created a variety of interesting psychological shifts in people that attend work. And I call it the 3 C's. More on that later, but crisis, crash, and comeback. When people are in a crash, they're just not themselves. The brain can't innovate as much. They're more entitled. There's more bickering, siloing, and there's a real difference in behavior. And I think that by understanding that, okay, the brain is different now in a hybrid world compared to what we did before, just take a few deep breaths, be kind to yourself as a leader. It's different now. You're going to need to navigate some uncharted territory. That can help a little bit as well. Just being aware that things are different. And along the way, we can pick up some good psychological hacks to help people into recovery out of a crash.
I'm hoping you have time here, but you mentioned the 3 C's there.
Yeah.
Do you have time to go into that? You said,
Yeah,
I didn't catch it. That was, the 3 C's
Crisis,
are
crash, and come back.
crisis, crash, and come back. Hey, this is the pandemic. This is what we've gone through then. It was a crisis, we had the crash, and the comeback.
Yeah, the crisis, crash, and comeback is my simplified model for psychological volatility. Whenever, like, if you think about it, Simon, isn't it true that we're all either in a crisis, we've just come from one, or we're heading into one, right? There are all these like spikes along the road. It's maybe a complaint, it's a deadline, it's, oh, I need to make up the numbers, or whatever, something at home. There are fires to fight everywhere we go in life. And the thing is that there's a real interesting pattern in the shift of our mind. When we're in crisis mode, we're hyper-focused, we're a bit more trusting with our teammates, there's more camaraderie, we're in the trenches together, as it were. There are interesting signs when we are in that post-sprint phase fatigue, that crash, and with that, scarily so for some people, energy goes down and a sense of purposelessness can kick in, and it's that kind of like, why are we even doing this? Initiative goes down. You tell me what to do, I don't know what to do, and so there's that post-sprint fatigue phase. But the great news is that you can come back with the right psychological strategies and the levers to pull. You can jumpstart the human mind or the team back into that, let's go again, we're strong, we can do this.
Isn't that the motor trade at the moment, and just what we've been through with the pandemic? And it's been lots of different pressures that every industry's had over the last 18 months, 12 months. Okay.
Leadership, you're right. And leadership teams are finding time punctuation quite helpful. I'll just maybe let the listeners in on this. This is one of my strategies for triggering a comeback. Okay. Time punctuation. What's the most commonly like searched Google term on the 1st of January? What are people Googling about on New Year's Day? Like, what are they looking up? It's like
New Year's resolutions. It has to be.
It's often about diet, right? It's about diet, especially. It's what's the new diet? How do I lose weight? And the question is, why does the human mind do that on the 1st of January and not the 13th of May? And that is because when the human mind... Why? It's because when the human mind perceives the beginning of a new period of time, it perceives what we call a fresh psychological ledger. And with that, we're able to separate our mistakes of the past and go, that was then, this is now.
Okay.
And by simply being able to go, that was then, this is now, the brain is now able to reach for a higher level of motivation it wouldn't ordinarily reach for. So you go 1 week before the 1st of January and, I'm eating mince pies and drinking brandy, all right? The 1st of January, I'm eating lettuce now, right? It's like, why? Because the human mind perceives a line in the sand in time. So I've been saying to leaders and managers, hey, why don't you use time punctuation with your team? Wherever you can time punctuate, this might just help jumpstart human motivation amongst your girls and guys. So it might be like, guys, that was February. This is March. Ask the question, what's our fresh focus? Ask your team this important question, what's your fresh focus? Guys, that was Q3. This is Q4. What's your fresh focus? Guys, that's when the kids were on holiday. Now the kids are not on holiday. What's your fresh focus? By helping your team see time. Guys, that was last week. This is this week. What's your fresh focus? By using that technique, Simon, leaders and managers are finding that they can unstick their teams a bit more. And it's one way to come out of crash and then to come back. Out of many of these.
I love that. I have to expand on it. I met a man in Australia. He actually run his departments halfway through the month. Now, what he said is, I think it's similar to what you're saying. He said, towards the end of the month, there's a natural push because we're trying to get cars delivered. There's that's where we want to get to because that's where we get paid. He said, so why don't we actually run our new cars to the end of the month? Because that's when our manufacturer wants us to get to that target. But why don't we run our used cars to the 15th to the 16th of the month? So then we get 2 natural pushes into the month. So salespeople want to get all the cars out on used cars by the 15th because it's the end of the month on the 16th, okay? Or the new month on the 16th. And I suppose that's exactly what you're saying with time punctuality, okay?
Yeah, exact time punctuation. By the way, that example that you've just brought up there, Simon, is a really, really great example of emotional intelligence in action. Because what we're doing there is we're looking at human behavior, comparing it against the timeline, because we're not machines, right? We're human beings. So
Yeah.
we show an irrational or behavioral pattern rather than a logistical or logical one. And I just think that's a great example. That's a great example. But we're doing that with work as well, aren't we? It's like we're looking at chronotypes of people. Like, when are you most creative in the day? Is it morning? Is it night? When are you
Different for everyone, I take it.
Right.
Some people are night owls, some people are early birds.
So by understanding how you're wired and how you best perform and what your patterns against time are, you can then start to think about, well, what types of work, when should I do my emails? When should I do my forms? When should I do my client-facing activities based on how you're wired in time?
Yeah. Yeah, love that. Love that. Listen, whose podcast do you look at? Whose books do you read? Who else? You've got so much information there. Can you give any tips or advice on other podcasts, your own podcasts and stuff that people should go? How do they find you as well? Tell us about that.
So a lot of what we talked about can be found in my Energy Shot podcast.
Great.
I hadn't thought about that until you just mentioned the question just now. But in the Energy Shot podcast, it really is all about how do we lift energy in a para-pandemic phase. So go check that out. It's on Spotify and other major podcast distributors. The other thing is that I'm about to launch a coaching app, Simon, because I'm getting so many questions like the ones that you're talking about. And I'm trying to think, how do I just distribute this information in a way that's going to get to people? And so it's called Dr. T Together. Dr. T Together. It's going to be available in app stores. And there's going to be a lot of Q&A that's going on there. In terms of what I am listening to, right now, I'm not studying a podcast at the moment. I'm actually just working on my own content.
Yep.
But I really love Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. I read that a long time ago, but I liked it. What did you think of it? What did you?
I love the idea is so basic and simple. And it is a simple, basic idea. And it has to be simple for me because I've got to tell you, Doctor, my biggest word's corrugated iron. Okay, I started washing cars for a living there. So it has to be simple for me to understand it. So I like stuff like that. And listen, I'm a real sucker for looking for what makes people tick in any which way. So tell me again, your podcast. I need to go and find it. I need to go and absorb that. The name of your podcast is?
The Energy Shot Podcast. Each episode is about 3, 4, 5 minutes long. They're very short doses of motivation. There's about 10 episodes thereabouts. Energy Shot.
Perfect. And also for people, clients who want to listen to you and how they can get you involved with their team to come into the business, how do people find you? What's the easiest way for them to come and find you?
Website, drtharaka.com.
Okay.
drtharaka.com.
Dr. Tharaka, that just leaves me to say thank you so much for this today. I've really, really enjoyed that. To put some science behind some of these theories that I've heard of before and some of the new ones, some great advice there. So I really do appreciate it. Is there anything else I should have asked you in this podcast?
We covered a lot, didn't we, Simon?
We have covered a lot. We've covered a lot.
I know. We could have drilled down on each of your questions and turned them into episodes as well. But I think... we didn't get into this, but trust, brain oxytocin and trust, and actually trust is connected to a higher level of confidential information exchange between two people. But we also know it's connected to a higher rate of sales and higher financial transactions. So neuroeconomic studies show that when there's higher levels of brain oxytocin in the blood between people, then we get a higher and deeper level of engagement, which actually converts financially as well. So we didn't talk about that, but that's okay.
That's okay. That's okay. I love this. So the higher the trust, the more people trust us, the transaction costs, what we're going to get, it's going to go up. Okay. And you said the word that was, it's, what was it? You used the big words that.
Trust is measurable in the blood.
Yep.
It's a hormone called oxytocin. It's released by the pituitary gland in the brain, and it's released when we engage in trusting and meaningful, deep connections, interpersonal connections. And what we know is that when we measure trust in the blood, in inverted commas, when we measure this level of hormone, we know that with higher levels of hormone, there is more confidential information exchange. So as a doctor, if a patient's going to talk to me about what they're concerned about, what they're worried about, some of this is very deep and private. And it's not going to happen in a low trust environment. This has to happen in a high trust environment. So I have to create trust. But also in a sales or transaction, paradigm, we know that when there are higher levels of brain oxytocin or plasma oxytocin, there are higher levels of money that exchange hands in experimental financial transactions. So there's a real ROI on trust.
There is a listen. I just again, I love that. It's something that we know, okay, but there's the science behind it, okay. So so many times salespeople, every now and then I hear salespeople say, "Well, I'll tell a little white lie here or there," but you know what? They catch you in a little white lie. I think you're going to rely on everything, and you know, trust is paramount. Anyone can say anything to sell one car. We want to sell people their second car, third car, fourth car. And it's that trust. So there's the ROI on that as well. Listen, thank you so much again for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, so welcome. Thank you, Simon.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.